I think you got it.
Is it doing it?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay. I was like, is it working?
No.
Okay, there we go. Great. That took me a minute to understand because I don't
You got it,
understand.
girl. We got it going.
Right.
We're figuring things out as we go.
I guess we can go ahead and get started or wait until like 6:05 maybe, or we could just get started.
Whatever you guys feel most comfortable with. If you want, we can introduce ourselves as the executive board.
That works. Since like we are newly elected. So for starters, hello, I'm Julia. I'm currently the president of Florida Southern College Democrats. Very excited. I've been involved in College Democrats on our campus since I was a freshman. So I'm very excited that we can have events like this, especially now that everything is virtual, where we have places for political discourse and just to become more informed in voting and whatnot. Because I know a lot of times, especially on our college campus, it can be very difficult to figure out like who you want to vote for and whatnot whenever we have classes and other extracurriculars, jobs going on and whatnot. So very happy that we can provide our membership with this resource.
Okay, I'll go next. My name is Logan. I am the director of political affairs. I am I'm becoming a sophomore since we just finished our year. That's crazy. I just totally forgot that like the year ended, my goodness. But I'm super excited for this. I'm very appreciative that you chose to come on with us and really looking forward to this next hour.
Whoever wants to go next can.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Lauren. I'm the newly elected secretary of College Dems, and I will be a junior next year.
I'm Jack. I'm the newly elected PR chair. This is my first. I'm newly involved within the club. I'm going to be a junior next year also.
I'm Ash. I'm the treasurer for College Democrats. I'm going to be a junior next year, and I'm looking forward to this.
All right. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and discuss your campaign a little bit, go ahead.
Hey, I'll introduce myself really quick. I'm Kiara Colon Torres. I am the campaign manager to Jesse Philippe and his run for Congress.
Jesse, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. I saw Carol and Alan and Kathleen there.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
All right, yeah. So my name is Jesse Philippe. I'm running for United States Congress. Where do I start? You guys want a background of me?
Of course, absolutely.
All right, cool. It's a long background. Let me see if I can beef it up. Well, guess what? I'm from Temple Terrace, so I'm from around you guys. I went to King High School. I played running back at King. And after King, I decided that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after high school. I was like, I couldn't went to college, but, I like the idea of serving. So what I ended up doing was I joined the Marine Corps. And I was in the Marines for about 6 years. And while I was in the Marines, I had a tour in Iraq. I came back from the tour in Iraq and I was like, I'm tired of serving. So I decided I worked in the private sector for a little bit and I did telecommunications sales for a number of years. And then doing that, I got, I was like, man, I miss helping people. Because one of the coolest things about Iraq was I actually got to see the benefits of helping others who are less fortunate than myself. I mean, I remember there was a time our convoy had stopped in the middle of the desert, and there was just a family of like 4 or 5 who didn't have nothing to eat, and they've been there for the past couple of days, just in the middle of the desert. So for me, we're able to give the MREs that we had on us. MREs are like meal-ready eat things, like they're not really good for like just to eat, but like in the middle of the desert, they keep you full. And so we handed a whole bunch of those out to them, and yeah, it didn't touch me because you saw how grateful they were for that. And so I missed that feeling of helping. So what I decided to do was like, well, what's the profession that I can essentially help people I decided to go to law school. So in law school, I got my Juris Doctor's degree. I went to Western Michigan University, got my law degree. And then while I was in law school, I decided that, hey, I want to continue to serve while I was in law school. So there I worked for the Department of Children and Families, which is assist families who are going through difficulties such as abuse or neglect. So I was heavily involved in doing things like that. And also I worked for the Department of Revenue, which provided assistance for single mothers who didn't have means of income to make it from day to day. And then from there, I decided, I love giving back. So I worked for the state attorney's office for a number of months, where I got to be involved in a lot of cases in terms of, criminal cases that essentially affect, and I saw a lot of the injustice in the criminal justice program. So all those things kind of wrap it up. It inspired me to run. I felt as if that our Congress didn't represent the majority of America, or majority of what we believe and what we see. Through my experiences in this public sector, I realized that there was a lack of support for the middle class. And I feel like a lot of the support was either in the upper echelon of incomes versus the middle class incomes. For example, like student loan debt, Social Security, like that funding, and things like childcare, aftercare, all these programs that assist middle class families were being gutted and being taken away. So I decided that, guess what, I'm gonna do something about it, like you guys are doing right now, and getting involved in your community, the same way I decided to do. And that's why I'm running for United States Congress, to give back,
Oh, well, thank you for that.
Of course.
I think definitely your story about being in Iraq, you said?
Yes, Iraq, yeah.
Very inspirational, and definitely it's very nice to hear stories like that, because oftentimes we don't really hear the human side of running for office and why people decide to run and what actually, like, the moment that they decided. So hearing stuff like that's always really interesting, and we appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
So we're just going to kind of jump into this now. Our first question was going to be why you decided to run, but you hit that, so thank you so much.
That's the most common question.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I'll try to kind of hit it.
So the next question I would ask you is, what is the biggest issue facing voters in our district?
Well, District 15 is very interesting because I don't know if you guys know the map, but District 15 encompasses 3 different counties. You have Lake County, which is over there by Orlando. Then you have Polk County, which is more to the east of us. And then you have Temple Terrace, which is where you guys are at. And then we have the Brandon area.
Right.
If you look at it, there's 4 different communities with 4 different issues. So when you look at, I can just give you some example. Temple Terrace, a lot of the things that Temple Terrace are focused on is how do we become a more prosperous city? What do we do to, continue to grow for Temple Terrace and make it more efficient? If you look at Brandon wants infrastructure. Brandon wants better roads. I mean, if you look at the 360, if you look at 60 and 301, you will see that, that those roads suck. Like, I don't know if you've ever been on those things at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm from Brandon. I went to Brandon High School.
Yeah. Yeah, those roads suck. Yeah, so those roads are terrible. So Brandon wants infrastructure. They care about that. Polk County, they want affordable housing. I mean, if you ever go out to Lakeland, you'll see that a lot of the infrastructure, they have no lighting. The roads are bearing, and they don't have any houses. So they want more affordable housing, more infrastructure, just like Brandon. And lastly, Lake County, which is way up north by Orlando, they just want to be considered, they want resources. They want the resources to help them prosper as a city, which is in Claremont and Groveland. So those are all 4 different areas. We all require 4 different needs. I mean, for me, I think the most common thing would be infrastructure for all of them. Major infrastructure in Brandon, Polk County, and also Lake County. Temple Terrace, it's not so much infrastructure, but more of resources that they need from the federal government to help them.
Yeah, I think it's really important to discuss just the size of the district and how diverse we are. So you did a really good job mentioning that.
Yeah, I'm from Brandon, and I was originally registered in District 15. I was like, well, is there any point in changing my registration to Lakeland where I go to school at Florida Southern? And then I was like, Yeah. But definitely like even just moving in the district, like there's definitely so many differences like
Yeah.
in like demographics and communities. So our next question ties into something that has been impacting all of us in one way or another
Mhm.
recently, and that's COVID-19.
Yeah.
I'm sure that we have all experienced it, whether having, I know for Florida Southern students having to move back home and figure out how to deal with classes online and like in a different environment. So our next question is, Congress has been going through many bills to help the American people in this crisis. How would you react or handle this global pandemic if you're a sitting member of Congress today?
That's a great question. For me, the first thing you consider is health. That's the most important thing. I mean, I know the economy is, crucial for everyone to live, but the health is the most important thing. What we've been doing, staying at home orders have been helping. It's been bending our curve. So the first thing we need to do is incentivize people to stay home. How do you do that? That is the big question. That's what people are arguing over, Democrats or Republican. What is the most effective way of getting this done? For me, I believe in curbing bending the curve first, and then after that, in growing our middle class. We have a great opportunity right now to kind of change the middle class from this coronavirus outbreak. What we can essentially do is, I don't know if you guys know this, but right now our employment is the highest it's been, I think, since the Great Depression. And so for right now, we have a great opportunity to restructurize America and make it a more green America, build out more roads, more green initiatives. So for me, what I would do is essentially introduce bills to help, fund a new vision, something on the lines of the Green New Deal and some of the lines of getting people back to work, creating jobs. For example, I was just speaking earlier about the infrastructure. One of the projects that we could adopt is an I-4 corridor railroad system that connects Tampa to Orlando to Pinellas County. That would increase jobs. And also creating a bill that focuses on getting, families, single mothers, and people who can't afford help of childcare. I don't know if you guys also know that most of the parents have to watch their children at this current state. And so imagine if they wanted to go back to work, they can't because they have to stay home. So providing or after school care and childcare is the most important thing. And just a holistic approach on how to retackle the middle class and allow middle class to be stable. What they're doing right now in Congress it's admirable. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. They are trying to keep Americans, employed, and they're trying to keep Americans, sustainable through this epidemic. But the problem is they're not doing enough, and that's the problem. It's like you can't give someone $1,200 for a mortgage, and you guys live on campus. You know how much campus costs. It's like $1,200 just a dorm room, just to pay for that. So it's just not sustainable. You can't essentially give people $1,200 and say, hey, guess what? You haven't worked in 3 months, but this should help you out. So what we need to do is more stimulus plans, more stimulus bills to continue to fund, the people while the epidemic is happening. And from there, bend that curve and get people back to work. And that's essentially what we have to do. And the only way you can do that is by being patient and understanding that, not all crises can happen and can be remedied in a month. It does take time and patience. That's a long-winded answer for that. Sorry.
I forgot I was muted.
Question.
But no, you're fine. The next question, we have a couple of questions that are COVID related, just because that is a very big issue, and it's opened a lot of discussions about different issues that have existed in America.
Definitely.
So the next question is, in the past, the United States was widely cited as the nation most prepared to handle a global pandemic. Today, we represent more than a third of all confirmed COVID-19 cases in the world. What do you believe went wrong, and how do you think this needs to be corrected, or how you might implement that in Congress in the future? If you need to explain on that question, let me know, because it was kind of all over.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. I totally get it. Well, for the first thing, let's talk about what we went wrong. We had back in December, we had first signs of that something epidemic was happening in China. Our response rate wasn't great. there's a lot of blame that, well, there was no funding and then, there was no action being taken. But essentially, it could have been solved by just having scientists and people who are specialized in epidemics in their positions to make recommendations. So a lot of the changes to fix this problem is on the executive level of picking the right people to address the needs of epidemics, any epidemics that's coming forward. As Congress, what we need to do is create an oversight committee to make sure that people are doing the correct things. We want to make sure that when we allocate funds to certain organizations, they're actually using it to help American people. Like, for example, this epidemic could have been prevented if the funds were necessary. I mean, I know you guys watch the news. So a lot of the big talk was there's not enough N95 N95 masks, excuse me. And there was not enough oxygen tanks. These are things that can be used through statistics and data analysis where we can determine how many we need. And this can be done if that department had adequate funding to determine that. So one of the things that we need to prevent anything from ever happening again is reestablishing that department, funding that department, and make sure that we have better oversight over the department to make sure they're using their resources correctly, to make sure that if another pandemic, happens again, we have a way to address it. Was that all the question? And I feel like I didn't answer some parts of it.
That answered it. Okay. I wrote that question. I was trying to write them like debate questions for some reason, and they were just way longer than they needed to be. I apologize for that.
No, it's fine.
So kind of keeping in with the same topic, so last COVID question, I promise.
No. Well, keep going. It's no problem.
So a lot of the issue that we see now is that small businesses which are trying to reopen in Florida are really having a tough time because they haven't gotten the financial support they need. So how would you ensure the federal government's response to the pandemic helps small businesses in particular?
Well, so Congress did do this. They initiated the Economic Disaster Loan Program, and they also implemented the PPP program, which is a Paycheck Protection Program. These two programs were supposed to be geared towards small businesses. Unfortunately, it was misused, and a lot of big businesses took that funding, which was wrong. But what we can continue to do is to stimulate the small businesses by substituting their income to make sure that they keep employers essentially on payroll and also keep them sustainable. Now, the problem that we're having with this COVID-19 is that a lot of the businesses, they don't know how long can they keep their doors open without funding. So essentially what we have to do is come up with common sense solutions. For example, like putting indirect checks to the individual Americans' hands to keep them sustainable. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of businesses who are trying to pay payroll and they're trying to keep their business open. And if you operate a business, a lot of the costs that are associated with it usually is payroll. That's usually about the bulk of everyone's expense. And then secondary is the operation costs. So if we give businesses the opportunity to give them stimulus just to cover the operation cost, and also at the same time give businesses to give individual Americans a substitute paycheck, that should be able to be more sustainable than trying to allow small businesses to every 3 or 4 months, every 3 or 4 weeks apply for a new loan, because there's no way to predict how fast this is going to end. So instead of having small businesses continue to rack up debt after debt after debt to control payroll, we should sustain the middle class through its own separate individual plan and allow the businesses to sustain their operation costs, to essentially separate the two payments. That's why I believe it would actually keep us sustainable going forward and help small business owners not having to cover payroll costs and top of operation costs. Because here's the thing, guys, it's just like student loan debt. Imagine if you have to take $400,000, $500,000 in business loans. Even I don't care if it's at 1% or less than 1%, it's gonna take you a good 5 to 10 years just to recover. And most small business owners that I know, they live paycheck to paycheck. It's not like they're making a great amount of money compared to an average worker. they're literally living paycheck to paycheck. So imagine to add another debt to them, trying to cover payroll costs on top of the actual operation costs. They're not going to be able to sustain. You're gonna have a lot of businesses who shut down because they can't sustain that amount of payment to continue. So that's my idea. I think that we should just separate payroll from businesses and tackle both at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's really difficult because on one hand, Americans want to go back to work, and on the other hand, we have all these different government programs and everything that's saying we can't open back up quite just yet. So you're absolutely right. It gives that problem where they have to pay for their payroll, but also they really aren't making enough money to do so. So I think you did definitely explain in a really well way just how exactly the federal government could get involved with that. And unfortunately, haven't really seen federal leadership there yet.
Yep.
So the next questions we have are sort of similar. It's more about healthcare. So according to the Census Bureau, 27.5 million Americans, which is about 8.5% of the American public, do not have any health insurance whatsoever. Do you have a plan to cover more of the American public, and will this plan ensure that coverage offered will be quality and affordable?
So my idea of healthcare is very different from a lot of my opponents, and it's very different from a lot of Democrats or Republicans. It doesn't matter what branch. I believe that I don't really, but I believe that very simple. That how you tackle healthcare it's a very different approach, because right now, I don't know if you guys know this, but in almost every major city in America, there's a VA system, right? There's a veterans, affairs in every city in America. And what they do is they provide healthcare support for veterans. So one of my proposals is to essentially attach a civilian unit, a part of it, and provide low healthcare options to working families. So every VA would have a civilian component to essentially provide support. So imagine, instead of forcing everyone to get healthcare in America, but let's say you can't afford it. Let's say you're a college student, and most colleges have like clinics on campus. So imagine that you have this VA civilian component that you can just go to, pay $10 a month and get a physical checkup. And you wouldn't need health insurance. You just go there, you pay $10, and that's a very low cost option of healthcare because it's already embedded in our system. Pretty much every city has a VA, and what we're talking about doing is just adding a civilian component so that when people come who cannot afford, major expenses or major medical bills, they can actually go there at a very low cost option, just like VAs, just like the veterans do. So essentially to wrap up, it just replaces health insurance. Instead of people having health insurance, it provides a hospital and a clinic to people to actually get services done.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. This is a question that we got from one of our members, Caitlin Swanbeck, and she says, first of all, thank you for your service. How do you think your military experience impacts your political perspective?
It impacts it because I've seen a lot of people in need. My whole life is kind of a reason why it affects my decision making. The military, what it did was it allowed me to have discipline and understanding and empathy. It taught me the things that most people get taught when going to college. It teaches you to be disciplined, to have empathy, to have understanding. It's the same skills you guys learn in college. It's the same skills we learn in the military. It's just we're just getting yelled at versus that's the only major difference. And what happens is when you have that discipline and then you learn that empathy, you start to understand why it's important to give back to your community. You start to understand, why it's important to get involved in politics. Most people hate politics, but you start to understand that, hey, like I go back to my earlier example with the Iraq story, those people was out there for days with zero food. We have the luxury of living in America, so we don't have to deal with that. But there are still families in America who can't, eat. There's still families in America who struggle to pay their bills. You know, I mean, COVID-19 is a prime example of that. We have 40 million people unemployed. So all these things, you know, are very similar to what I learned in the military, that you give back, you fight for people who can't fight for themselves. You always constantly, you know, always look out for your brother and your sister, no matter what. You know, we're all the same. We always got to keep fighting for each other. So those are kind of the skills and the things that I learned in the military. And that's when I want to take to Congress, is to keep fighting for people.
Okay, Logan, do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, so we have two other questions from
Yeah.
our audience. So the next question that we have was from Facebook. This viewer asked, what would you say to Americans who no longer want to stay at home because they cannot afford it?
Oh, due to COVID-19.
Yeah, I'm assuming due to
Okay.
COVID-19.
Yeah. So what I say to most Americans is, you know, it's hard to have a holistic approach to how you should address it, your issue, your finances. I believe all people in leadership are there for a reason, and that's to protect people who can't protect themselves. This is why we elect people, so that you know that the decision making that they're doing is in the best interest of you. So I say balance it out. Understand that if you're in a high area that still is dealing with high COVID-19, I think I just read an article this morning where Tampa reported the highest death rate since this COVID-19 even came out. You know, so if you're still in that position where we're still affected by it, I'm going to tell you that, hey, we have to listen, and we have to trust that our government is going to protect us, our health, and then our pocketbooks. Because I understand that not only is it important that, you know, we make a living, but it's important that we stay healthy. Because what happens if, you know, you lose a loved one? You know, that doesn't matter how much money you make, you don't care, because you lost the person that you love. So for us, I would tell that person, like, hey, ultimately you make the decision if you're going to work, you know, if you need to work, but your health should come first, and put pressure on your government to make a difference and tell, like, hey, I want to stay home, I want to be healthy, but you need to pass something to allow me to do that. And that's all. That's why I said politics is in everything. People hate it, but you have to, you know, hold your leaders accountable and tell them, like, hey, I'm not going to risk my life. You need to step up and do something. So that's why I would tell that person.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. We have one more audience question. This one is from Max Birdwell, who is a future member, I guess is the best way to put it. The question is, how do you believe we should start opening the US back up, and once the COVID cases start a constant decline?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I believe that we should start back up very strategically how we do it. First of all, we need to get people who are affected most by not working back to work. But you have to kind of you have to bring it like in phases. So right now, the governor stated he has phase 1, phase 2. And the reason why that's so important and is actually correct, I said it, Republican is actually doing the right thing. The reason why we do that, because what happens is we're trying to limit the amount of people who come in contact with each other. So when we say by phases, if your job allows you to work from home, that should be the last phase to should be allowed back to work, because you're still getting paid and you still have ways to work. The people who don't have that should be going back to work immediately. For example, people who are working in salons, you know, industries where it's dependent on customer service. So when you have that, you have to find a way to get people back to work, because what ends up happening is these people cannot survive for a month or 2 months without a check. That's just, it's not feasible. So the first people that needs to go back are service workers. Once you get service workers to get back, then you're allowed to slowly bring in professionals, because professionals has the means to essentially work from home and stuff like that. So I think it should be based on the people with the greatest needs of needing to go back to work and limiting the amount of people who do go back to work, but it should be based on essentially people who need to work the most.
Okay, we can go into a couple of environment related questions, because I know that for a lot of students on Florida Southern, that's become like a very big issue, or at least the people who I'm friends with. Florida's ecosystem is one of the most unique in the country. However, Florida is not well known for protecting its environment. SERP, the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, is a restoration plan which appropriated funding to protect the Everglades from further devastation. Since day one, it has not received full funding and many are fearful for the future of both the program and the Everglades. Would you commit to fully funding SERP? And are there any additional measures you would commit to taking to further protect the Everglades?
I'm like I said, I'm one of the few candidates that are a big proponent of the Green New Deal. You know, a lot of people don't like it. They think that it goes too far. I personally think that it doesn't go far enough because the reality is we have to be a country involved in the environment. So let's just face it, guys. We live in a state where it's very conservative, and their priority is, businesses. Is not really focused on the environment. But I tell you this: you can make big changes in your economy by focusing on the environment. So a lot of people don't understand, so the Everglades is important. It's how we get life. It's the oxygen that we breathe. So if we just keep keep destroying it, guess what? We're destroying ourselves. I mean, I look at our climate change. I don't know if you guys ever visit Miami. Right now, you see the rising sea levels. It's incredible how high it's growing. If you visit Pinellas County, you can see if you drive along the, I think it's what's that road? The Clearwater Beach. As long as you drive down the beach, you can literally smell the algae in the water. So Florida is changing. Florida is becoming it. It needs us to be more, mindful of the environment. So I'm going to say that I 100% support funding it. I'm 100% support anything that it takes to make sure that we're changing our economy, which is focused more on environmental. We need environmental economy, essentially, to answer the question.
Thank you. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
The environmental economy.
So the next question that we have kind of follows up on something that you hit on. So you mentioned algae specifically. So this is something that's really big in my district. I'm from CD 18. So nutrients and everything are just it's my thing. I know I could tell you all about it, but
Yeah.
would you commit to sponsoring legislation to combat the detrimental effect of nutrient runoff?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, that was a yes or no question. So if you want to go into it more, but
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Of course.
So another question that we can go into that impacts a lot of college students and has across the nation was that in the previous stimulus bill, college-age students who were claimed as dependents did not receive any economic relief. Do you believe the United States government should have offered economic relief to this population of students? And would you, as a member of Congress, support legislation offering relief to this population?
So they're talking about the stimulus check, right? The $1,200.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the stimulus check, like I told you earlier, it doesn't go far enough. It's only $1,200, and most people can't survive it. And a lot of people, you're right. College students should have received money because guess what? College is not free. You still got to eat. You still got to get from point A to point B. And what happens is, we have a system right now where I feel like it's an unfair system to college students. We're told from the day that we go, from elementary school, hey, you gotta go to college, you're gonna be something in life. And we work hard. I'm speaking for myself because guess what? I went to school. And for me, what I saw was that it's a lack of support for us, college students, because the reality is our parents, when they went to school, literally could have gone through school with $30,000 in their pocket and got a 4-year degree. We go to school, we literally can walk out with $100,000 worth of debt. And I feel like our government, it's not really focused on that. Like I said, our government is it's not really focused on middle-class issues. And that's a middle-class issue. I'm 18, 19-year-old, having to go to school, some have to go get a nighttime job because, their parents can't afford that high tuition and high cost. they're affected, and there's no reason why if you can have a stimulus plan geared towards someone's parents, that their child that are in school can't receive any support. Because at the end of the day, how are they going to feed themselves? You're telling the parent that, hey, guess what? We're going to give you $1,200, but your kid that's like 500 miles away from you, we're giving them nothing. And we know that you support them while they're in school, but we're not going to give you anything for them. It's sad, but that's kind of the reason why I kind of got in this race, because a lot of people, it's great political talk where people are like, oh yeah, we're going to do this for you and great do this for you. But I feel like a lot of people don't really understand our generation and what we've gone through, because we're in a different time, and the time that we in, the most jobs are not out there for us, and the student loan debts are rising, and our parents can't afford it, and they're expecting us to be able to afford it where we can't. So that's a long-winded answer. Said yes, I should have received something during the stimulus plan, but I just thought I had to share all that with you guys, because the reality is I feel like a lot of people who get into Congress, they like to say, oh yeah, well, we definitely want to do student loan forgiveness, yeah, but they never do it. To be honest with you, they just kind of say it. I'm speaking for someone who has student loan debt, so I understand what you guys are going through, and that's something that I will always champion. Is like, hey, guess what? Our future are 18 to 35-year-olds. I understand that our parents, sacrifice, but we need an America that focuses on the 18 to 35-year-olds, which is environmental friendly America, an America that focuses on how do we get people to school and educated without having to drive them in debt for another 10 years. Like we need an America focused on people first instead of profits. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. Because I feel like we're moving away from people and moving to like, hey, how do corporations benefit from everything, which is wrong.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. Our next question is kind of also tied to younger generations. All of our College Democrats members began K through 12 education years after the Columbine High School massacre. In many ways, we are kind of considered the school shooting generation. Do you believe that our current gun control laws go far enough to protect our citizens, or do you believe that Congress should enact further gun control measures?
So it's a very interesting question. So I went to law school, so we had this long-winded explanation of why the Bill of Rights are in there, and so it's at the time it made sense. Just think about it. If you're a new country and you're starting these new projects and these new concepts and new ideas, of course you want to protect yourselves, because you just remove yourself from tyranny, from the British rule. So you're going to be like, hey, keep your guns. We need our guns, because what if the British come back? Makes sense in 1770, whatever, 1780, whatever it was. But in 2020, I don't think we're worried about people coming back and taking over America. So for me, I believe that, there's no reason why people need assault weapons. I mean, I was in Iraq and literally, like, I walked around with an assault weapon. And when you're in a war zone, it makes more sense. But when you're in America, what in the world are you who's gonna attack you, or are you gonna need an assault weapon? So I believe that we should ban assault weapons. That's to me, that's just common sense. If you can't, like me, you're talking to someone that, I served, I shoot, I go to a range and shoot. But for me, it doesn't make any sense why you need an assault weapon in America. If there's no, I don't see any possible reason why anyone would need one. So I believe in you can have handguns, but I don't believe that we need to be having assault weapons. I think it was a butt stock thing you could install in the back that caused a lot of damage. You don't need that. You don't need any weapon that's automatic at all. So to answer your question, I'm definitely, when I get to Congress, passing a legislation that bans assault weapons in America for American civilians, because there's no need for it. There would never be a need for it. And anyone that talks about that there's a need for assault weapons are just lying. There's just no facts to that at all. To answer your question.
Thank you for that. That's just always, so I wrote that question. I knew people who were at Marjory Stoneman Douglas during the massacre there, and I don't necessarily want to say it sparked my involvement in politics, but it is still to this day something I think about when I wake up and when I go to bed. And hearing answers like that and seeing how far we've gotten since then is inspiring to say the least. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So thank
My
you.
next question is, sorry?
I said thank you. You know, people like you have the courage. I wasn't involved in, a massacre in my school, but I did lose a friend to gun violence in high school. You know, he got shot across the street just going to McDonald's, and he died. And it's all because, people were being stupid that day. So I empathize with you, Logan, in that aspect where I lost a friend to gun violence. So I definitely understand why you're passionate about it. And that's why we need the politics. We need people who really live in our world and who really understand what we deal with in our generation. So I agree with you 100%.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
My next question kind of keeps in somewhat of the same theme, but also goes a little bit deeper into something else. Ahmaud Arbery was an African-American man who was shot dead by two white men on February 23rd in the suburb of Georgia. Arbery committed no crimes and was merely out on a jog before his life was taken. Do you believe Arbery's murder was racially motivated, and what, if any, federal responses should be taken to prevent further loss of life in the future?
There's a two-part question to that. So the first part was, do I think it's racially motivated? I can't speak to the intent that the father and son, had. All facts seems that it was racially motivated. I can't really speak to if that was the case, but I mean, I think that's a bigger issue. We're in a generation now where a lot of social media is kind of dividing us, and we're using a lot of rhetoric and hate towards each other. I mean, that's not just in black and white. That's also in, Hispanic community, how we look down on Hispanics. That's how we look down on poor working class Americans. We're having a common theme where we are hurting people. Instead of building people up and loving each other, we're constantly in this system where we feel like we need to bully someone to feel more important. That's lack of leadership on the top. I agree. Well, that's what I'm going to say. And that's not a message that, it's America. I mean, I was in America. I love the fact that I can go outside and run in my neighborhood. I should not have to fear anyone, and I feel like that's the America that should be throughout all of America. And I don't care if you're in the deep south of Georgia or if you're in the north of Chicago. At the end of the day, we should be able to go outside and live and live our lives, and enjoy ourselves. And for me, I feel as if we are not doing a good job of talking about it. I feel like what we're doing right now is like we're all staying in our corners and we're not speaking up. The great thing about the situation was we got to see the community come together on this. I don't care. I saw whites, blacks, Hispanics say, hey, this is injustice and we need to step up. And there were so many people who got involved, and that's why they were arrested, because there was such an outcry. And I believe that that's what we need to continue to do to move forward and progress and be a community, and a community of love, and speak truth to power, essentially tell them like, hey, this is wrong. And that's why I believe, like I said, to answer the question is I definitely think I can't answer if it was racially motivated, but I can tell you that from my perspective, gun violence is something that affects, like you were saying earlier, the school system. It affects every generation, no matter what race or creed that you have to deal with. I mean, we just have to get back to a message of love in America and away from a message of divisiveness. Your second question was, what would I do in Congress?
Yeah, I was just referring to federal leadership in this.
Well, federally, yeah. So under President Barack Obama, there was a trying to think. It's like that. I believe it was FBI. They had a task force where it dealt with civil rights issues such as this. That program has been pretty much depleted by President Trump. But what we can do is we build that program back up to tackle these civil rights issues, because it's hard to say that we can police morale, but we can't. But what we can do is send a message that if you do something that affects, that's racially based, there are consequences behind it. And right now, I feel like there's a lot of racially charged language out there and actions that are being taken, but there's no real accountability. So that's why I think that the federal government, especially Congress, can definitely start making sure that we penalize people for acting in a racially motivated way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Julia has a question on immigration, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a result of Trump's rhetoric, many DACA recipients are fearful of their future. Do you believe there should be a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients?
Yes, to answer the question. The DACA recipients a lot of them are America. I know, so for me, I don't know if you guys read my bio or anything. My parents are Haitian, so I was born here, but my parents were born in Haiti. And so I got to see the lens of immigration. I got to see, how someone comes to America, with nothing, and they work hard and, they fight through it. Like my mother, she was a CNA, and then she worked her way all up to becoming a registered nurse. Uh, I got to see that. So for me, I believe in a pathway to citizenship because I believe that if you give someone an opportunity, they can give back to the country. And I believe a lot of DACA recipients have the ability to give back to our country when they become citizens. Uh, you know, I, so to answer the question, I'm 100% to say that yes, the DACA recipients should become legalized citizens. To answer the question.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out which question to go with next.
Mine.
Logan, do you have any ones that we should go for?
Let me look at my list. I'm sorry, we had so many questions. We didn't realize how long they were going to take, so I apologize for that.
No, it's fine. I got all night. I can do this all night. It's fine.
So this is something you touched on a little bit, but I was kind of hoping to expand on this. So I'm glad I have this opportunity. In 2018, Forbes announced that the amount of student loan debt owed had reached $1.5 trillion, trillion with a T, in the United States. How would you commit to fighting to limit this burden?
To tackling student loan debt?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So what makes me different from a lot of other candidates that are running is I believe that our student loans should be based on your public service work. So President Obama did this when he was in office. Essentially, if you worked for 10 years, your student loans were forgiven. I think we need to bring that back. So there's a lot of noble professions out there, like lawyers, firefighters, police officers, who loans should be forgiven. So once they complete a certain amount of years of service, they should cancel out their student loan debt. For others who decide to, have student loan debt, we believe that we need to almost make no profit off of it. It needs to be literally 0% interest rate, because I believe right now it's about 6 or 7%. It should be at 0% interest rate. And then we should offer incentives so that people can get it reduced. For example, 100 hours of community service will reduce it by $10,000. Another couple of hours of community service will reduce it again. So not necessarily cancel it all out, but incentivize people to get involved in their public service work to get it reduced and to eventually be canceled. So imagine if you do 100 hours of community service for 10 years, guess what? You have no student loan debt. That allows people to get involved back into the community and start to use their skill set they learn in college to help the public in a whole.
Thank you so much. I think that is pretty much a lot of topics that we've covered, but are there any other issues that you would like to discuss that we didn't bring up?
You guys talked about pretty much all the good ones. This is a topic I want to bring up to, especially young voters. Right now, if you look at our politics, you have these extremes on both sides. You have, Democrats, you have Republicans, and it's great to believe in the idealisms of what you believe. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that we're moving away from the idealism of America, which is compromise. A lot of the things that you see in America, from the Declaration of Rights, from Declaration of Rights, that was before the Declaration of Independence, before the Declaration of Independence. And a lot of the things that we see in the way our system is so amazing, it's because of compromise, you know? So I just tell people that it's great that we are very charged about our positions, but we have to understand that if we don't compromise, we're gonna get nothing done. I mean, if we looked at these past 20, 30 years, that's a prime example of getting nothing done in Congress. I mean, I can't even tell you what Congress meaningfully passed in the last 30 years. And what's happening is it's causing a divide in our country where you have the middle class don't feel like they have a voice, the poor class doesn't feel like they have a voice. And that's gonna be dangerous, you know, because what's gonna happen is, like in every society, when you don't have a voice, you tend to have uprisings. So I'm stressing the seriousness of it because for me, I feel like we need to go back to a politics of community and understanding the importance of loving each other, our brothers and our sisters, and trying to, connect with one another. Like if you know a Republican, hey, I want to know why you think the way you think, and let's figure this out. Let's figure out a plan that works where both sides can come together and talk about issues. So that's my 2 cents on that. And I wanted to leave you guys with that. You guys did an amazing job. I love this platform. It's better than the other platforms where people, they don't have like challenging questions. It's just like, what are you gonna do for me? You guys are all about the community, and I love that. That's awesome. You guys have those great questions.
Thank
And,
you.
yeah. And if you guys want to get involved, our campaign's always looking for people. I think we have about 20 people on staff. They're all volunteers.
Okay.
And so we love to have volunteers because we love people who are passionate about politics and, well, not even politics, just government in general. And we love to have people in there. And I love to learn because I feel like my staff are way smarter than me, like all 20 of them. Like they have like ideas. Like I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. I'm going to run with that one. So I love to learn. So if you guys want to join our team, I'm a vessel. I would love to learn from you guys.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
We can definitely share that information with our membership. I think we have
Definitely.
one more question, which was just, why do you believe that you are the strongest Democrat running to oppose Representative Spano in November?
Well, so that's a great question. So I believe I'm the strongest Democrat because of experience. I mean, I've worked in, like I said, I was in the Marine Corps. I worked in the Department of Children and Families. I've worked in the Department of Revenue. I've worked at the State Attorney's Office. And all those different jobs, I learned what it takes to, one, work in government, and also, two, how to work with other people. And so, because I had to work with other people to get things done. So I feel like I can take on Ross Spano because essentially I have more experience than the other candidates in terms of when it comes to public policy and creating policy. My undergrad degree, I forgot to tell you guys, is in public policy. So my undergrad degree isn't making, I learned how to make laws. I've worked in the public sector for a number of years. I have a law degree. I feel like my experience and my background makes me diverse. And our message, honestly, our message is different from Ross Spano. We have a message of community. Like everyone in this campaign believes in the person next to them. They believe that, hey, we need to be a community that goes to Congress. A lot of people, says my face is on the ballot, my face, but my idealisms is in our team. Our team believes in the community, and our team is the reason why we're successful as we are now. And that's why, I'm different because I bring that team atmosphere. I believe in our community should be making a change, and not just me, but the people around me. So
Awesome. Thank you
great.
so much.
And if anyone has any other questions, is there any way that they can contact your team for questions or anything?
I'm going to step off and let Kiara answer that question.
Yes, thank you for asking. So you can definitely contact us at info@jessiephilippe.com, and I will make sure that I put that link in the Facebook Live for today. We also have a campaign number, and all of our information, whether it's social media or traditional media, can be found on jessiephilippe.com.
Okay, great. Thank you guys so much. This is definitely very fun. I don't think we've really had events like this before in the past.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I'm very excited that we could do something like this. So we're just gonna go
We're
ahead.
so appreciative of you coming. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day.
You too, guys.